we have one more brief from Major Tom Pledger, who, unlike Zach and Jacqueline, I will intro. Now that that's fresh on my mind that I messed that up. So I'll intro Tom, and then immediately following his brief, we'll do a Q&A session for the last round of panelists you just saw. So without further ado, let me get my notes. Major Thomas G. Pledger, he's with the Army National Guard Directorate within the National Guard Bureau. He's currently working on refining the process and techniques that the Army National Guard Directorates use to engage, support, and staff headquarters, Department of the Army, National Guard Bureau, Army service components across the states, territories, and District of Columbia, and various other agencies with equity. So it's great to have Tom here. He and I actually go back to our days at the Joint Iowa Warfare Center, where we supported U.S. Special Operations Command together. But it's also good to have another perspective. You know, we've had Air Force, we've had Marines, we've had civilians outside of the DoD, and now we get not only the Army, but the Army National Guard, which at this point, you know, with everything going on today, they're busy because the National Guard across the country is helping out with the COVID response. So without further ado, Thomas, I kick it over to you, my friend. You should have a share screen button.
Yep, I got you, Lucas. I'm just going to say hi to everybody, and let's go ahead and start this. Sure. All right, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So here's my blank and 20-second slide. So good afternoon, good morning, and good evening across the globe. So I am Thomas Pledger. I am at the National Guard Bureau. Technically, I'm inside the Army National Guard Directorate, which is inside National Guard Bureau. I am in the Chief of Staff's office, and I've been currently tasked to refine the processes and how we engage across the force. And it's really key. So this is sort of the look most people give us when we say we're at the Army National Guards. What exactly is it you say you do here? Historically speaking, you've seen the memes online of the fat soldier deployed in the chow hall with the cupcakes and all that stuff. I'd say that's probably not a fair assessment anymore. The Army National Guard has, as you can see right here, the state response for disasters. We're currently deployed in every state and all the territories in support of COVID and the medical responses that go within that. We're busy. We got that, and we're basically trying to do this under our own authorities and not be federalized because we restrict a lot of our authorities there. We train everywhere the Army and the military goes. We do the same combat training center rotations. We participate in the globally integrated exercises. This guy right here is in Alaska, and he's freezing it up there, shooting rounds. But not only do we do all the training that you guys do, all the active duty does, we also conduct other operations below the level of conflict. We got engineers here in the Middle East, it looks like Iraq, and they are currently trying to clean up where a VBID went off. This is an older picture, yeah, but still rather relevant. I've been to the Middle East twice, Afghanistan once, and I know I'm not amongst here. This right here is from last year. These vehicles were in Syria. We go everywhere the Army goes, everywhere the military goes. I directly coordinated with Marines, the Air Force, the Navy, while I was on multiple deployments. So that's where we're at. Now let's sort of get into who we work for. So this is one of our old Minuteman symbol, and you may have heard a controversy that happened last year over this symbol. The generation that's coming up right now didn't recognize the Minuteman right there in the middle as an old white guy fighting for America. The history of that wasn't taught as the plow, because that's his plow in the background representing. So this is the new emblem we got, which is the Army National Guard. The funny thing is this is one of those great service issues, is this has been technically assigned to only be supporting for the recruiting and retention command. It's one of those little funny little tidbits. We still see it all over the place, but it's there. So who we work for? Technically, we work for the Chief of the National Guard Bureau over there on the far right. That is who we go for. That is our primary boss. He's on the Joint Chiefs of Staff. has the same say as the Commandant, CNO, and the Chief of the Staff of the Army and the Chief of the Staff of the Air Force. Now, when it gets a little more intricate, because we also work for the Secretary of the Army right over here. But at the same time, what you don't see on here is the Chief of Staff of the Army. So we engage with the Chief of Staff of the Army and his staff on a daily basis, which gives us sort of a dual line that we engage, which creates some of those complications, which leads us to this place. And we're going to talk about this right side here in a few seconds. The governors, the adjutant generals, they are their own complicating factor on how we engage across the force. 20 seconds. So it leads us to the Pentagon, in which most of us have had time to walk through the Pentagon, and it's the same places. We have offices in there as the Army National Guard. The National Guard Bureau has offices in there, and HQDA has offices in there, and we coordinate across all three of them on a daily basis. It's very difficult, very time consuming sometimes, but as we all know, the puzzle palace is the Pentagon, creates meetings upon meetings and always trying to figure out who will make the final decision. So those are our sort of up bosses that we talked about. We got CNGB, we got Secretary of the Army, we got the Chief of Staff of the Army. And so that's sort of the up. Now we're going to go sort of across. So we also are responsible as the directorate to the Army Service Component Commands, all 10 of them, the geographic and the functionals, except for we really don't respond to the reserves right there, second over. And we also coordinate with all the direct reporting units that we coordinate with. And we do this in order to help train, develop, and deploy the Army National Guard forces across. Then that leads us to the adjutant generals, of which for the Army National Guard and the various status functions operate like a multinational land component commander. The directorate provides guidance and resources, and the tags, who are the commanders, can choose what to do. They don't get as much leeway as they'd like sometimes, but they're still basically the commander for their army. But that doesn't lead us all. We also have the 50 states and DC. So we also have Guam, the Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and American Samoa out there. So it's not just the continental United States that we deal with. We're also responsible for those supports. The Army National Guard has multiple divisions with none belonging wholly to one state or one adjutant general, so that complicates. The director's relationships to the tags and governors can be touchy when it comes to resources and force structures, as most governors and tags have a direct line to their congressmen, and the congressmen will and do make very poignant conversations on topics that are close to home. A key example of this is when the Army was trying to take away the Apaches. Congressmen would call and talk to the Chief of Staff of the Army about that exact point on multiples. In the end, it leads us to this place, too many cooks, all discussing on resources, all discussing on the force development, all discussing on deployments, and everybody gets an opinion.
Okay. Just wanted,
as soon as, I love the chef. And as soon as some brief is built, some other staff section from any of the above comes in and makes its weight known. And as the Army National Guard Directorate is led by the director, a 3-star, and not a commander, this makes things much more touchy for moving through. Which leads us to our current situation. The Army National Guard Directorate is looking at changing the way we assign forces and talent, pushing more and more talented outside agencies, the Army Service Component Commands, the direct reporting units, HQDAs, the National Guard Bureau, FEMA, DHS, all of these outside agencies as a liaison network to increase and speed up ours. We actually just went through a full manning document review, and that's where we're at. Which brings us to my current issue. Right now, I'm looking at the 3 different templates that we get and up and out. So right now, I'm sorry, as I get on a daily basis when I try to help people, I'm sorry my job is here to try to make your job easier. And I'm going to pause there.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Now I know a lot more. Sorry, Lucas, you go ahead. I'll handle the Q&A after you say your piece.
No, really appreciate it, Tom. I think that the Army National Guard is a not well understood part of the military. And, I only know personally about it from my interaction with you for the better part of 3 years. So greatly appreciate you coming on and talking about some of the things that you all are facing, what you're working on, where you are, because as we look out, across the DoD, and the IC, we can now look at the National Guard and have a better understanding of what you all do and how you can help and how we can help you. So greatly appreciate it.